Alright guys, so now we're looking at the four basic arithmetic operations. Sorry about that. We're looking at the four basic algebraic operations, which is the difference, right, which is subtraction, the sum, which is addition, of course, the product, which is multiplication, and the quotient of two numbers, which is division, right? So it's pretty simple. Let's do some examples. So it says the difference of two numbers. You have x minus y. So another example would be a minus b with algebra. The sum of two numbers, so we can have what, 2a plus 4a, which would be equal to 6a. That's the sum of two numbers. The product of two numbers, you can have z multiplied by a, which would be az. Then the quotient of two numbers, which would be, you could have 2b divided by 3a, which would give us 2b over 3a. Cool. So this is the four basic algebraic operations, right? So we all know you have addition, you have multiplication, division, and you have subtraction, of course. And these are the four operations that we will use with algebra. And I have some examples to solve here. Down here it says translate the following verbal phrases into algebraic expressions using the symbols given, right? So the first one says 5 times a number x. So clearly the answer for this one is going to be equal to 5x, right? Easy. Then the next one says 7 times a number x plus the second number y. So this would be 7x plus y. Then the next one says 6 times a number x plus a second number z, which is equal to 6x plus z. Then D says half times the product of x and y. So this is a half times the product of x times y, which would actually end up being x y over 2. Alright guys. Then the last one says 3 times the product of two numbers. They should be numbers x and y divided by z. And this one is actually really easy. The product of two numbers x and y, so that's xy divided by z, and that's the answer for the last one. Alright guys. Okay, so we see how manipulating the basic operations are pretty easy using the algebraic form. It's rather simple, right guys? And now we're going to be looking at the rules for multiplication and division. Alright guys. Alright guys, so now we're going to be looking at rules for multiplication and division. So let's read the bottom first in this case. It says, from the examples above, it can be seen that when we multiply positive numbers, then the product is always positive. So let's look at that. In this case, we're multiplying a positive number by a positive number, and we get two positives, which will give us a positive, right? Let's look at any more. Here, we multiply a positive number by a positive number by a positive number. We end up with three positives, and we end up with a positive, right? That makes perfect sense. And so this is correct. That's definitely right. And the next one says when we multiply an even number of negative numbers, then the product is always positive, right? So let's look at this case. We have two negative numbers, which is an even number of negative numbers. Then we're going to get negative a times negative a, which gives us a positive result. And that's true. We also have this situation where we have two negative numbers, negative a times a positive number, and then we're going to end up with two negative a's, which would give us a positive, right? The two negative numbers multiplied would give us a positive, then we end up with a positive number, right? So that one is definitely right too. Okay. Yeah. And then the last one says when we multiply an odd number of negative numbers, the product is always negative, and that's true. In this case, we have one negative number, which is an odd number, multiplied by a positive, and we end up with a negative number. In this case, the same thing. We have one odd number for a negative number, and we multiply it by a positive, and we end up with a negative. Same thing here. We have an odd number set of negative numbers, three negative numbers, and we're going to end up with a positive multiplied by a negative, which gives us a negative. And here we have one negative number multiplied by two positive numbers, so the negative number is still odd, and we end up with a negative number, right? So this is also correct. Cool. So the main thing you have to remember, guys, if you multiply two negatives, you're going to get a positive. If you multiply three negatives, you're going to get a negative. And it's important for you to just simply look at these rules, remember them, so that you don't get mixed up when you doing the exam. So let me just write this down for you. The most important thing to remember is when you multiply a negative by a negative, you're going to get a positive. And if you multiply three negative numbers, right, or as they say, an odd set of negative numbers, you're going to get a negative. Okay. And the first one, you have to remember that to a positive number multiplied by a positive number is equal to a positive number. Okay, guys. And you should be totally cool. All right. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to move on to division as well. Okay. All right, guys. So now looking at the situation for division. Okay. And we see here that if you divide a positive number by a positive number, then you're just going to get a positive number. And if you divide a negative number by a negative number, you're going to get a positive number. But in the case where the situation is odd, if you multiply a positive number by a negative number, you're going to get a negative number. If you divide a negative number by a positive number, you're going to get a negative number, right? So in this case, above both quotients are positive, and in the case below both quotients are negative. All right, so let's do some more examples. Let's say you have b squared divided by negative b. The answer would be b. This b would cancel this b, and you'd end up with negative b, right? Which is shown here. Okay, and if you divide a squared by a, which is two positive numbers, you're gonna get a, cancels this too, and you're just gonna get a positive a, right? So this is pretty simple, guys. It's pretty easy to see that anytime you divide by a negative number into a positive number, you're gonna get a negative number, and when the signs are the same, it remains positive. When the signs are not the same, it's gonna be negative. All right, guys. Cool. So let's move on to substitution. All right, we're gonna look at some substitution with algebraic equations. Okay. That's it. And I'll see you in the next lecture. And remember to do your best, and God will do the rest.